So you've probably heard of time blocking. It's the practice of scheduling your tasks on your calendar. It's been very popular over the years, and productivity gurus swear by it. The promise was that it's supposed to help you be more organized, more productive, more focused. But in the past, I could just never make it work for me. I mean, I did the first step, which is to plan everything out on my calendar. But when it came time to follow the plan, I largely just ignored it. Until a few weeks ago. So recently, I got placed on some antibiotics. I had 3 different medications that I had to take on different schedules, different food requirements. It was all very complicated. And it turned out that I had 9 different doses that I had to time throughout my day. And I realized that there's no way I could keep it all in my head. So for the first time, I fully booked out my entire day, including when I was going to take the meds, when I was going to eat, when I was going to work, when I was going to shower, when I was going to go to the gym, all of it. And so it was a real challenge on following my schedule. And you know what? It worked. Out of the 126 doses, I only missed 2. But more importantly, everything else got better. I slept better, I exercised more consistently, my energy stabilized, and my mind felt just way more calmer and focused. And yeah, I was way more productive. And what I realized is that the key to time blocking isn't about being more disciplined or using more willpower. It's about building an external system that supports your inner system. So in this video, I want to break down what time blocking actually helped me with, why it never worked before, and what finally made it stick this time. So a little bit of context. I work for myself and I work from home most days. I have a ton of freedom, and it can be a double-edged sword because now I have to make all the decisions about what do I need to prioritize, when am I going to do those things, and how long should I spend doing them. And oftentimes, when I'm in the middle of a task, I'm thinking about something else. Am I forgetting something? What should I be doing right now? And that would actually prevent me from being able to fully apply my focus towards the thing that I'm doing. And I didn't realize how much energy I was spending just remembering my plans. So previously, I had been working within teams, companies. I had a structure that scaffolded my attention and energy. But now as a solopreneur, I realized that all of those functions are up to me to decide. So the biggest benefit of time blocking that I found was that it removed a lot of decision making from my day. I didn't have to keep asking, what should I be doing right now? When am I going to do that? Or am I forgetting something? That was all already decided. And because of that, there was way less background anxiety. When I was doing something, I wasn't also thinking, should I be doing something else? And that made it so much easier to focus. There were fewer competing thoughts pulling on my attention, and I could be way more engaged in what I was doing, and ultimately more productive. So why didn't time blocking work for me before? Well, the biggest reason is I didn't understand what it was for. I thought it was just another productivity trick. I did it in a really idealized way, meaning I planned my day out perfectly, but inevitably something would slip. And when it did, the whole thing fell apart. And once it broke, I just abandoned it. And then finally, there's this part of me that really rebelled against the structure. Like when the time came to do something, I would decide whether or not I would do it based on how I felt in the moment. I would say to myself, I don't feel like doing this, or I can do it later. This isn't urgent. And in the moment, those choices felt good, but then they had a cost that had to be paid down the road in terms of anxiety and stress. So it wasn't that time blocking doesn't work. It was that I was doing it without understanding the problem it was solving and how to use it in a way that fit my nervous system. Okay, so here are the things that really made a difference for me. The first and probably the biggest is prioritizing my physical needs. In other words, making sure that my physiology was performing at its best. Time blocking only worked when my body was actually supported. Sleep, hydration, food, movement, when those things were off, my schedule didn't matter. My nervous system, my mind, was just not in a state in which I could actually make the choices to follow my schedule. And if you know the metaphor of the elephant and the rider, you know that the elephant is going to do what it wants to do, regardless of what the rider wants. So in the past, I would try to override my body into doing something it didn't want to do. And this is the first time I actually used structure to support my body. So for example, in those 2 weeks, because I had to schedule every single meal, what I found was that my blood sugar was more consistent. I ate smaller meals. I made sure that I had a balanced diet of protein, carbs, fiber. So I didn't have these large spikes of energy followed by a crash. And because I was more consistent energetically, I could have better executive function. I had better decision making. I had better stopping power in my brain to avoid distractions and to respect the limits that I have imposed on myself. So when I was in my morning work block and I got into the zone, but then it came time to eat lunch, I chose to stop, despite the fact that I was in flow, that I was really engaged, because I knew that if I chose to prioritize my body and my fuel, that I'll be able to get back into that state more predictably later on in the afternoon. Whereas had I pushed through, sure, I could have maybe squeezed out another hour or two of work, but then inevitably I would crash. I would be really hungry. I would eat whatever and then crash. And then the afternoon would be less productive. So I was teaching myself to trust that I could recapture momentum even after stopping. Okay, the second thing that I learned is that my sense of timing was all wrong. Most of the time, I was underestimating how long things would take. And so then I actually started to time things. For example, how long does it take for me to get back from the gym, shower, cook breakfast, eat, all of those things, get dressed? And almost everything took a bit longer than I expected. And so now I assume I'm underestimating and I build in a buffer by default. And that's allowed me to feel less stressed out. On the days that things go smoothly, I'm just really on it. Great. I enjoy the extra time. I enjoy the extra spaciousness. I've learned also to not fill every single moment of my day, that I can just appreciate not doing anything. And this is something that I think a lot of us fall into, is that when we start to feel better, when we start to perform and execute more consistently, the natural tendency is to put more things on our calendar, to add more things to our plate. And that is a very quick way to overwhelm the system, which leads to the third thing, margin. If your calendar is packed, the system breaks, because the moment something goes off, you're behind. And then you go into firefighting mode and you stop using it altogether. So now I leave space on my calendar on purpose, especially towards the end of the day. And I'm very protective of that space. And so the fourth thing is to separate the planning from the doing. So before, I was trying to figure out what to do while I was doing it. And that's a lot of mental overhead. And not only that, we don't make the best decisions when we're under pressure and emotional. And so now I do my planning, I decide ahead of time. And during the day, I just follow the plan. And yeah, there are moments where I start to question, is this optimal? Is this the best way to do what I need to do today? But it's a practice of allowing for things to not be fully optimized. It's trusting that I don't have to optimize for every single minute of my day, that the plan doesn't have to be perfect in order for it to be beneficial. I also just want to add that it's really important to be emotionally and mentally calm and grounded when doing the planning work. And I don't just mean stressed out or anxious, but when we're overly excited, we tend to overestimate how much energy we'll have. So being realistic with ourselves, being honest with ourselves about how much can we actually do really protects us from future disappointment and having to replan things out again. And the more accurate we get, we learn to trust the system, which really means to stop renegotiating with ourselves throughout the day. Before, every moment was like, do I feel like doing this? Now it's, I already decided this is what I'm doing. But building that trust in ourselves and in the system that we built, it takes time. Trust isn't built overnight. We don't learn to trust the system. We don't learn to trust ourselves immediately. We have to start small. And over time, we notice, oh, yeah, that actually does feel better. Oh, yeah, I could actually commit myself to doing the task that I set out to do, and it wasn't that painful. Or I could actually take a break, and that was the right thing to do in that moment. But it starts with making a promise to ourselves to try things that may feel different, may feel uncomfortable. I'm not saying it's easy, but the cost that you pay in that moment will greatly pay off in the future, because being inconsistent has a hidden cost. And that cost is a lack of clarity and a lack of confidence in yourself. Because if you say you're going to do something and you don't follow through, you lose trust in yourself. And in the future, when there's something important you really want to do, you'll be carrying that self-doubt, not sure if you'll be able to actually follow through. So when all of that is in place, time blocking stops feeling restrictive and starts feeling like support, because you're no longer relying on willpower. You're relying on a system. And so for me, time blocking wasn't about becoming more disciplined just for the sake of it. It was about building a system that would support how my brain actually works. And what I've seen, not just for me, but for a lot of people, is that we don't struggle because we don't know what to do. We struggle because we can't do it consistently in a way that's sustainable. And that's why I've been building something called Tempo. It's a small group program focused on this exact problem: how to build consistently without pressure, stress, or having to rely solely on willpower. And so it's not just time blocking, it's supporting your physiology, building realistic structure, learning how to follow through, and doing it in a way that your nervous system can sustain. It's really for people who have something they want to bring into the world. They know that they can do it. They know what they need to do, but they just can't seem to do it consistently. I'm running a small cohort right now, and we're working through this together. And if that resonates for you, I'll put a link down below. At the end of the day, it's not about managing your time better. It's about making it easier to follow through on what matters to you.